My name's Lydia. I'm 34. And sometimes I lie to myself so well, I almost forget what the truth feels like. It's been 7 months since last Christmas, the one where my sister, drunk and gleaming with rage wrapped in tinsel, pushed me down the stairs. I remember the exact moment I heard the crack of my wrist, sharp and wet, and the stunned silence in the room afterward. It lasted 2 seconds, maybe 3, before someone laughed. Then the rest joined in. It was like watching something sacred break. My family didn't see me, they saw a punchline. And when I looked at my partner, Tom, across the room, his smile was small. Awkward. But it was still a smile. He didn't come to me. I think I've been breaking ever since. Tom and I have been together for 9 years. We used to orbit each other like stars, that gravitational pull that made everything else feel like background noise. I remember us in our first apartment, lying on that awful hand-me-down couch, his fingers laced through mine like they belonged there. Everything felt electric then. I used to catch him watching me brush my teeth and think, this is what being adored feels like. We used to have sex in the middle of the day, like the clock didn't matter, like nothing could interrupt the world we built inside 4 walls. He'd touch my back and I'd lean into it without thinking. It was never about performance. It was about being known. But that feeling? That warmth that used to live under my skin when he looked at me, it's gone somewhere. Or maybe I've buried it. Now he kisses me good morning like it's habit. The kind that fades into the blur of routine, like brushing crumbs off the counter. He still calls me babe sometimes, but his voice has a weight to it, like he's lifting a memory instead of feeling something real. The last time we had sex, 3 weeks ago, I felt his breath on my neck, his body close, and I thought about whether I'd remembered to switch the laundry. That realization sat in my throat like gravel. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything. I just let it happen, and afterward, he rolled over and fell asleep without a word. That's the thing about long-term love. It's not usually the cheating or the shouting or the slammed doors. It's quieter. It's in the way he doesn't ask about my writing anymore. In the way I used to make him playlists, and now we just let Spotify decide. In the way he pulls me into a hug and pats my back like a sibling might. It used to be chest to chest, breath shared. Now it's a polite touch. Something to check off. I tell myself it's normal. That after nearly a decade, things change. People evolve. Love matures. But sometimes, it feels like I've become invisible in my own house. I cried in the shower last night. Not because anything specific happened. Just because. Because I burned dinner and he said, it's okay, without looking up from his phone. Because I miss who I was when he adored me. Because I can't tell if we're tired or done. It wasn't always like this. He used to pull me into his lap just to feel close. We used to argue about stupid things like whether pancakes or waffles were superior and end up tangled in bed, laughing. I used to look forward to coming home. Now, I sit in the car sometimes and wait until the song ends just to delay walking through the door. I remember the exact moment I knew something had shifted. It wasn't big. It wasn't cinematic. It was the day after the Christmas incident. My wrist was in a cast, and I was trying to button my jeans with one hand. Tom walked in, toothbrush in his mouth, and watched me struggle for a second. Then he just said, "You'll get the hang of it," and walked away. No offer to help. No kiss to the forehead. No softness. That moment, that goddamn toothbrush in his mouth, it's burned into me. Because it wasn't what he did. It was what he didn't do. And since then, I've started noticing all the little silences, the spaces where care used to live. I still love him. I think. But maybe love isn't always enough when you're the only one trying to feel it. Tom is a trauma nurse. 12-hour shifts, bodies broken in 1,000 ways, people screaming, blood and antiseptic soaked into his pores. I used to think that was what made him soft, that being surrounded by suffering all day made him more tender at home. But now I wonder if it just emptied him. If maybe he used it all up before he ever got to me. The day of the misunderstanding wasn't dramatic. It was a Tuesday. I'd taken a personal day, Not because I was sick, but because I couldn't stand the idea of showing up to my office and pretending to care about spreadsheet audits. I sat on the couch with a blanket over my legs, watching steam curl up from a mug of tea I never drink. My wrist ached even though it was fully healed by then. I'd started to call it my ghost pain, like my body couldn't let go of that moment either. Tom came home late. Again. It wasn't malicious, it rarely is. A car accident on the freeway, someone coding twice. He told me the story with a kind of tired pride, scrubbing his hands like he could still feel the blood. I listened. I always do. I asked the right questions. Did they make it? Was the family there? How are you holding up? He shrugged off his hoodie and leaned in to kiss me, not a peck, a full, searching kiss, the kind he used to give me when we hadn't seen each other for days. But it felt forced. Wet. Heavy. His hand was already under my shirt before I could register what he was doing, like he thought touching me that way would stitch the emotional gap shut. I flinched. It was small, barely a twitch, but he froze. You okay? I nodded. Lied. Just tired. He pulled back, eyes scanning my face like he was trying to find the version of me he recognized. You've been off lately. Distant. I could feel it coming, that familiar cycle where he reaches out with his body and I need something else entirely. I'm trying, I said. It sounded pathetic as soon as it left my mouth. He stood up, rubbed his hands on his jeans. Okay, he said, flat. Cool. And that was it. No fight. No open wound. Just a sealed envelope of silence sitting between us. Here's the thing no one tells you. Feeling unseen doesn't always come from being ignored. Sometimes it comes from being touched when you haven't been hurt in weeks. I didn't want his hands. I wanted him to ask why I couldn't sleep. Why I'd started keeping my phone under my pillow. Why I avoided my sister's texts like they were grenades. I wanted him to look at me like I was still his person. Not just a body to return to. Tom grew up in a family that didn't talk about feelings. Midwest people. Stoic. Hugs were rare, kisses even more so. You had to work for praise, and crying was reserved for funerals, immediate family only. I remember meeting his mom for the first time. She smiled with her mouth, but not her eyes, handed me a casserole dish like it was a test. You two playing house? She asked. I laughed. She didn't. I, on the other hand, was raised in a house where feelings were loud. Explosive. If my mom was upset, the whole street knew. If my dad was happy, he'd sing Sinatra until midnight. I used to think I wanted quieter love. But now I'm drowning in the silence. That night, Tom fell asleep on the couch, still in his scrubs. I watched him for a long time, the rise and fall of his chest, the little wrinkle between his eyebrows that never goes away, even in sleep. I wanted to love him the way he needed, physically, gently, without all the emotional excavation. But every time he reached for me, I felt 1,000 unspoken things rise in my throat and choke me. I tiptoed to the bedroom and crawled into bed alone. My pillow smelled like rosemary from my hair mask, and I pressed my face into it, trying not to cry. But I did. Not loud. Not the kind that makes you feel clean. Just slow, steady tears that soaked the case and reminded me I was still here. Still feeling. He came in at some point in the night, slid into bed beside me like he always did. His arm draped over my waist, automatic, warm. I didn't move. I didn't lean back. I just let it sit there, heavy and misplaced. Like a promise no one remembered making. He whispered, I love you, you know. And I stayed silent. Because I didn't know anymore. The thing is, I still want him. I miss the way I used to melt into his chest without overthinking it. How easy it once felt to kiss him at the kitchen sink, to brush past him in a towel, and feel his gaze like heat on my skin. But now, everything feels loaded. Everything feels like the beginning of something I don't know how to finish anymore. Saturday morning, Tom made pancakes. That used to be our thing, Saturday pancakes, mismatched mugs of coffee, the kitchen full of jazz or bad pop depending on who got to the speaker first. But this morning, it was quiet. Just the hum of the fridge and the soft scrape of batter hitting the pan. I walked in wearing one of his old t-shirts, the one with the faded Red Wings logo. He smiled when he saw me. "Well, look who's wearing my lucky shirt." I forced a smile. "It's comfortable." He turned back to the stove, flipping a pancake with too much flair. "I thought you hated that one." I changed my mind. He walked over, plate in hand, and kissed me on the temple. His hand slid down my back, then lower, and he gave me a light, playful smack. I froze. It wasn't rough. It wasn't rude. It was familiar. But my whole body went still, like my skin had forgotten how to be touched that way without flinching. I stepped forward, just out of reach, and grabbed a fork from the drawer like I hadn't noticed what just happened. Tom frowned. "Hey, you okay?" "Yeah," I said too quickly. "Just tired." "Didn't sleep much." He nodded slowly. "You've been tired a lot lately." There was a bite underneath his words, but I let it pass. We ate in silence. I pushed the pancakes around on my plate, letting syrup pool in the corners like I was waiting for something in me to wake up. Tom kept glancing at me, trying not to be obvious, but I could feel it. That quiet tension building behind his eyes. The question he didn't know how to ask. Later, we were folding laundry on the bed, and he leaned in to kiss me. It was soft, unhurried. The kind of kiss that used to be a lifeline between us. But all I could think about was how staged it felt. How it was the third time he'd touched me that day, and I still hadn't looked him in the eye. He pulled back slightly, his mouth still close to mine. "You don't feel here. With me." My chest clenched. "I am." "Then why does it feel like I'm kissing a memory?" I didn't answer. Because he was right. I want to feel connected. I want the kiss to spark something in me. But lately, it feels like he's kissing through glass. Like I'm on the other side of it, watching myself play the part. Smile. Nod. Respond. Go through the motions. And maybe part of me is scared that if I say the truth out loud, that the intimacy feels more like pressure now, I'll break something we can't put back together. That night, he reached for me in bed again. Not urgently, not aggressively. Just his hand on my hip, his mouth brushing the back of my neck. I lay there, completely still, counting my breaths. I didn't push him away. But I didn't lean into it either. And in my head, louder than anything, the question formed again, why does everything have to turn into sex? It was supposed to be a nice dinner. His idea. A tiny Italian place tucked between a liquor store and a laundromat, where the tables were too close together and the lighting made everyone look like they belonged in a movie. He made a reservation and everything. Said he wanted to spend time with me like we used to. And I wanted to want that too. 3 weeks. That's how long it's been since the restaurant. We still live in the same space. We brush our teeth in silence, pass each other in the hallway like coworkers who used to be close. He still makes coffee in the morning. Still leaves the light on for me when I stay late at work. The basics remain. The polite gestures, the shared groceries, the car insurance bill with both our names on it. But it's all function now. Not feeling. And the worst part? I miss him. I miss us. But I have no idea how to find the way back. Sometimes I hear him in the other room, laughing quietly at something on his phone. And for a second, I think that's the sound I used to live for. Then it fades. He'll get up, walk past me on the way to the kitchen, and his hand might brush my arm accidentally, and I'll flinch, not from fear, but from unfamiliarity. From the ache of realizing how foreign we've become to each other. There's a different kind of loneliness when you're lying beside someone who used to know you completely and now doesn't ask how your day was. And still, I can't bring myself to say anything. He doesn't either. Last night, I watched him sit on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands. Just sitting. Breathing slow and heavy like the weight of everything had finally settled onto his shoulders. I could have reached out. I could have wrapped my arms around him, pressed my cheek to his back the way I used to when he came home from hellish shifts at the hospital. But I didn't. I just watched. Frozen by pride. Or fear. Or some combination of both. I saw the curve of his spine, the tension in his jaw, the way he blinked like he was trying not to cry. And for the first time since that dinner, I realized something painfully obvious. He's hurting too. Tom isn't the villain of the story. He's just a man who wasn't taught how to name his emotions. A man who has spent years holding bloodied strangers in his arms and being told not to let it get to him. A man who, when I stopped responding to his touch, didn't know what else he had left to offer. He loved me the way he understood love, through showing up, through physical connection, through doing things, dinners, fixing the leaky sink, rubbing my shoulders without being asked. He thought touching me was the bridge. He didn't realize I needed him to stand still, to ask, to sit in the mess with me instead of trying to mop it up. And I never told him. Not clearly. Not kindly. I just let it all rot until it exploded under restaurant candlelight. The guilt is heavy. I keep thinking back to a moment from 2 years ago, a stupid Tuesday when I was crying in bed over a work email, and he came in with a grilled cheese and sat beside me until I stopped shaking. He didn't say much. Just put a hand on my knee and told me I didn't have to be okay yet. I think that's the version of him I keep grieving. But maybe he's still here. Maybe I just stopped looking. This morning, I walked into the kitchen and found him leaning against the counter, coffee half drunk, scrolling through his phone. He looked tired. His scrubs were wrinkled. There were faint bruises under his eyes. "Morning," I said. He looked up surprised. "Hey." It wasn't warm, but it wasn't cold either. Just real. Quiet. Like we were both afraid to disturb the silence too much. I opened the fridge, grabbed the milk, and paused. "I'm thinking of taking a couple days off next week. Just to breathe." He nodded, cautious. "That sounds good." Then silence again. But this time, it felt like something more than absence. It felt like a question. I wanted to say, "Do you still want this?" I wanted to say, "I miss you." I wanted to say, "I'm sorry I didn't know how to let you in." But all I managed was, "You okay?" He looked at me for a long time, then gave a small, tired smile. Getting there. And something in me cracked open again, but not like it did at dinner. Not in rage. This was softer. Sadder. Like stepping into an old house and realizing the walls are still standing, even if the roof's a little damaged. So here I am. Sitting on our couch, in the same Red Wing shirt, watching the rain trace lines down the window. Trying to decide. Do I keep walking forward, alone, and learn how to live without the weight of him? Or do I turn around and try again, not to go back to what we were, but to build something new, something honest? I don't have an answer yet. But for the first time in weeks, I think I want one. I even put on makeup. Real makeup, foundation, mascara, the whole thing. I wore a dress I hadn't touched in months, the one he used to call his favorite, though I doubted he remembered saying that. When he saw me, he whistled low and said, "Damn, you clean up nice." It made me smile. Almost. We were 2 bites into our pasta when it started. "So," Tom said, twirling his fork, "your mom texted me today. Said she hasn't heard from you since the Christmas incident." I looked up sharply. "Incident? That's what we're calling it now." He gave a little shrug, clearly trying to keep the mood light. "I mean, yeah, it was bad, but she pushed me down the stairs, Tom." "I know." He paused. "But she was drunk. And your family laughed." They laughed when I screamed. I felt the blood drain from my face. My pulse thudded in my ears. "And you just stood there." His smile dropped. "Okay. Hold on." I didn't just stand there. Yes, you did. People at the surrounding tables were starting to shift in their chairs. I could feel the waiter hovering behind the counter, pretending not to listen. "You stood there with your hands in your pockets like it wasn't happening. Like you didn't know me." His jaw tightened. LYD, it was chaos. I didn't know how to react. "You're a trauma nurse, Tom," I snapped. "You literally run toward people in crisis every day. But when it was me, your partner, on the floor with a broken wrist, you just watched." His face flushed. "You're seriously still holding on to that?" That was the moment. The exact moment when everything inside me cracked open. Yes, I said, louder than I meant to. Yes, I'm still holding on to that. Because that was the moment I realized I wasn't safe. Not with them. Not with you. And every time you touch me now, every time you try to fix this with your hands instead of your words, it just reminds me that I'm still on that floor and no one is coming. The restaurant went quiet around us. Forks paused midair. A wine glass clinked somewhere. Tom sat back, his expression a strange mix of shock and embarrassment. Jesus. I wanted to reel it in. I wanted to apologize. But I couldn't stop. I needed you, Tom. Not your hands. Not sex. Not another babe, it'll be fine. I needed to feel like you saw me. And you didn't. You haven't in a long time. He looked away. His throat moved like he was swallowing something down. I don't even know what to say to that. Then say nothing. And just like that, the air left the room. We didn't finish dinner. We paid, or rather, he did, his hand shaking slightly as he signed the receipt and walked to the car in silence. The kind of silence that hums in your ears. Not angry, not even cold. Just hollow. When we got home, he went straight to the bedroom without a word. Closed the door, but didn't slam it. Just enough to say I need space. I sat on the couch in that damn dress and peeled my heels off slowly, like if I moved carefully enough, maybe I wouldn't fall apart. But I did. Quietly. I cried with my hands over my face, not because I was angry, not anymore, but because I didn't recognize myself. I was the woman who yelled in restaurants now. Who made scenes. Who carried her heartbreak around like a purse, just waiting to spill it on the table. I wanted to go in there and tell him I was sorry. But I wasn't sure I was. What was I apologizing for? For finally saying something out loud? For not letting it die inside me like all the other tiny hurts? I didn't know. I curled up on the couch, heart still pounding, and thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed love would always be enough, that intimacy could be patched with a kiss, that safety was something you felt, not asked for. And all I could think was, God, how did we get here? 2 nights ago, I dreamed I was falling down the stairs again. Same staircase. Same blue garland wrapped around the banister. My sister at the top, her face blurred. My body tumbling. That awful crack. Only this time, when I landed, no one laughed. The room was empty. Tom wasn't even there. I woke up drenched in sweat, throat tight, and for a second, I reached across the bed for him. But the sheets were cool on his side. He'd slept on the couch again. I stayed there, blinking at the ceiling, thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe we're just a slow, quiet goodbye waiting to happen. But the next morning, he was standing in the doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. He didn't say anything, just held one out. I took it. That night, I asked if he'd talk to me. Really talk. He nodded once, cautious. Like someone approaching a wounded animal. We sat at the kitchen table, the one with the chip in the corner from when we tried to build IKEA furniture without instructions. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his chest like a shield. I went first. I'm sorry, I said. For ambushing you at dinner. For holding all of it in until it turned toxic. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the rim of his mug. Then, I didn't know how far you'd drifted. I knew something was off, but I kept telling myself it was just stress. That it would pass. I felt invisible, I said, voice breaking. Not because you didn't care, but because I didn't feel known anymore. I didn't even know myself. His eyes softened. You stopped looking at me. I was angry. I know, he said, gently. I just didn't know why. You never told me. I didn't know how. I kept waiting for you to notice, and when you didn't, it felt like proof. Proof of what? That I wasn't worth seeing. He looked like I'd punched him in the chest. We sat in the silence. This time, it didn't feel empty. It felt honest. I didn't know what to do, he finally said. I kept reaching for you the only way I knew how. But you flinched. You looked gone. I was gone, I whispered. For a while. And then I said the thing I hadn't dared to say out loud. Do you still love me? He didn't hesitate. Yes, but, but I'm scared that we can't get back to where we were. We won't, I said. And maybe that's okay. Maybe what we need is something new. Not fixing what broke, but building something better. He nodded. Slowly. Like the words were heavy but real. We didn't hug. We didn't fall into each other's arms. It wasn't a movie ending. It was two tired people sitting at a kitchen table, bruised but willing. The next day, I suggested counseling. Not because we were broken, but because we didn't want to be. He agreed. We started small, relearning each other. He stopped assuming every kiss meant sex. I started letting myself be touched again, just gently. A hand on my shoulder. A brush of fingers when he passed me the salt. We made space to ask questions without flinching. And we also gave each other room. Some nights, he still slept on the couch, not out of punishment, but because we agreed to take it slow. No forced intimacy. No pretending we were fine. Just two people trying to find a way back into something honest. One evening, a week later, I was curled up on the couch watching something forgettable when he sat down next to me. Close, but not touching. I miss holding you, he said. I didn't say anything. Instead, I leaned over and rested my head on his shoulder. We stayed that way for a long time, no TV, no distractions. Just shared breath, shared space. The quiet hum of possibility. And when he kissed my forehead, I didn't pull away. I closed my eyes and let it sit there. It wasn't a fix. It wasn't fireworks. But it was a beginning. Sometimes I still think about that Christmas, the moment my body broke, but something deeper inside me cracked even more. I thought the betrayal that night was the worst kind of pain. But I've since learned that silence in a relationship can be just as cruel as laughter in a room full of people who should love you. I'm learning not to disappear. He's learning how to stay without needing to fix. We're not perfect, but we're trying. And right now, that's enough. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me sooner. You can love someone deeply and still feel alone. You can share a bed, a mortgage, a life, and still ache for something you can't quite name. I used to think relationships broke in obvious ways, yelling, cheating, betrayal. But the real cracks? They start quiet. You miss a moment, then another. You stop asking hard questions. You start assuming silence means we're okay. You mistake physical closeness for emotional connection. And then one day, you look at the person you built a life with and think, where did you go? Worse, where did I go? I learned that the hard way. Christmas, the fall, the laughter, the cast, the silence, it wasn't just about my sister or my family. It was about that instant where something in me switched. Where I realized I wasn't safe in a room full of people who claimed to love me. And when I turned to the one person I thought would see me, and he didn't, the ground didn't just break beneath me physically. It fractured inside me too. Tom didn't hurt me. Not intentionally. But that's the thing, harm doesn't always come with bruises or cruelty. Sometimes it comes from absence. From not asking. From meaning well but missing entirely. And me? I didn't know how to say what I needed. I waited for him to notice. I waited for him to save me without ever admitting I felt lost. I thought love meant never having to explain myself. I thought if he really saw me, he'd just know. But people aren't mind readers. Not even the ones who love us the most. We tried. That's what I want you to know. We really did try. We went to counseling. We had the hard conversations. We set new boundaries. We learned how to touch again, not just skin to skin, but soul to soul. For a while, it worked. For a while, we rebuilt something slower, quieter, more honest. He stopped grabbing at me like I was a solution. I stopped expecting him to decode my silences like love letters. We met each other halfway. But here's the other thing, trying doesn't always mean staying forever. Sometimes trying is what you do before the end, not instead of it. A few months ago, we sat on the same couch where we had our first big fight. There was no yelling this time. No tears. Just two tired people holding hands and realizing we had come as far as we could together. I love you, he said. And I said it back. Because it was still true. but we weren't right anymore. And that's okay. Love isn't always about permanence. Sometimes it's about presence. And Tom, he was present, even in the leaving. He moved out in May. He took the couch, the bike he never rode, and that Red Wings t-shirt I stopped pretending to hate. We hugged in the driveway. I kissed his cheek. He told me to be good to myself. I told him not to forget how much he's capable of feeling. It wasn't an ending soaked in bitterness. It was a release. A letting go that made space for something new in both of us. So where does that leave me? I'm still learning. Learning that emotional intimacy can't grow in silence. That I deserve to be asked, to be known, to be chosen, not just in the easy moments, but in the hard ones too. I'm learning that desire changes. It's not always heat and hunger. Sometimes it's about wanting to be understood before being touched. About needing emotional safety before surrender. And I've learned to speak. God, that was the hardest part. I don't sit in my car after work anymore, dreading going inside. I don't shrink at someone's touch because I'm afraid it's just a shortcut to something else. I say what I need. I tell the truth, even when my voice shakes. I still dream about that Christmas sometimes. About the stairs. The laughter. The betrayal. But now, when I wake up, I remind myself I didn't deserve that. None of it. That night broke something open in me. Not just my wrist. My silence. And maybe that's the real gift, the awful, complicated gift. Because now I know who I am. Now I know what I need. And I'm not afraid to ask for it anymore.